And then in the case of NATO, they don't want to help us defend the strait, and they're the ones that need it.
President Trump has lashed out at NATO over alliance members' refusal to get directly involved in the war or to intervene with their navies to get oil tankers moving through the Strait of Hormuz.
Canada's reaction to the growing discussion around deeper cooperation with the European Union is defined by a careful balance between strategic realism and long-term positioning in a changing global order. In Ottawa, policymakers do not see this moment as a sudden shift, but rather as the continuation of a trend that has been building over the past decade. The comments made by Donald Trump criticizing NATO and questioning allied commitments have added urgency to an existing concern within Canadian foreign policy circles that reliance on a single dominant ally may no longer be sufficient in an increasingly unpredictable geopolitical environment. Canada is not abandoning its relationship with the United States, but it is clearly signaling that diversification of partnerships is now a strategic necessity rather than an option. Under the leadership of Mark Carney, Canada's foreign policy approach emphasizes resilience through multilateral engagement. The European Union is viewed as a natural partner due to its economic weight, political influence, and alignment with Canada's core values, including democracy, rule of law, and open markets. Canadian officials interpret the report, led by Tobias Kramer, as a strong political signal that Europe is ready to elevate its relationship with Canada beyond traditional cooperation. This is particularly significant because it reflects not only shared values, but also shared strategic concerns, including the need to respond more effectively to global instability and to reduce vulnerability to external shocks. From a Canadian perspective, the global security environment has deteriorated in ways that require a more proactive and coordinated response among like-minded nations. The war in Ukraine, driven by the actions of Vladimir Putin, has reinforced the belief that geographical distance no longer guarantees security. Canada sees the conflict as a direct challenge to the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity that underpin the international system. As a result, Ottawa strongly supports European efforts to strengthen defense cooperation and build greater strategic autonomy. Canada's participation in European defense initiatives is not only about contributing capabilities, but also about ensuring that it has a voice in shaping the security architecture that will define the future of the transatlantic relationship. At the same time, Canada's stance reflects a deep awareness of the need to maintain stability in its relationship with the United States. The economic and security ties between the two countries are too significant to be replaced or diminished. Therefore, Canada frames its growing engagement with Europe as complementary rather than competitive. Canadian officials argue that a stronger and more capable European Union ultimately benefits the broader alliance system, including NATO. Even when political rhetoric from figures like Donald Trump raises doubts about transatlantic unity, Canada's approach is to reinforce cooperation rather than escalate tensions. The idea of Canada potentially joining the European Union has generated attention, but within Canadian policy circles, it is treated with caution and realism. While there is some public interest in the concept, driven by cultural and political alignment, experts recognize that the practical challenges are substantial. Legal frameworks, geographic considerations, and institutional constraints would make full membership a complex and lengthy process. More importantly, Canada does not need formal membership to achieve its strategic objectives. Through agreements, partnerships, and coordinated policies, Canada can deepen its integration with Europe while retaining full sovereignty over its domestic and foreign policy decisions. This approach allows Canada to benefit from closer ties without assuming the obligations and limitations that come with full membership. In terms of geopolitical strategy, Canada increasingly sees itself as part of a broader coalition of middle powers that must work together to navigate a world dominated by larger and more assertive states. The rise of China, ongoing conflicts in multiple regions, and the erosion of established norms all point to a more fragmented and competitive international system. In this context, Canada views the European Union as an essential partner in preserving a rules-based order. By aligning more closely with Europe, Canada can amplify its influence and contribute to shaping global standards on issues ranging from trade and technology to security and climate policy. Expert analysis within Canada highlights the importance of institutionalizing this cooperation to ensure that it is not dependent on short-term political dynamics. This includes developing mechanisms for regular consultation, joint decision-making, and coordinated responses to crises. Canadian analysts argue that the ability to act quickly and cohesively will be critical in a world where events can escalate rapidly and unpredictably. Closer ties with the European Union provide a framework for achieving this level of coordination, while also reinforcing Canada's identity as a committed and reliable partner on the global stage. On the issue of Ukraine, Canada's position is firmly aligned with that of the European Union, and in some respects even more assertive. Canadian policymakers view the conflict as a defining moment for the international order, one that will determine whether fundamental principles such as sovereignty and non-aggression are upheld or undermined. The actions of Vladimir Putin are seen not only as a regional threat, but as part of a broader challenge to democratic governance and international norms. Canada has consistently supported Ukraine through military, financial, and diplomatic means, and it shares Europe's concern about being excluded from key negotiations. From Canada's perspective, any sustainable resolution must involve those who have been most actively engaged in supporting Ukraine and defending the principles at stake. Ultimately, Canada's reaction can be understood as a strategic adjustment to a changing world rather than a radical shift in direction. There is a clear recognition that the assumptions of the past, particularly regarding the stability and predictability of major alliances, can no longer be taken for granted. At the same time, Canada remains committed to a measured and pragmatic approach that prioritizes stability and continuity. By strengthening ties with the European Union while maintaining its core relationship with the United States, Canada is positioning itself to navigate uncertainty with greater flexibility and resilience. This approach reflects a broader understanding that in a more complex and contested international environment, success will depend not on choosing one partner over another, but on building a network of relationships that can collectively support peace, stability, and prosperity.